and I know what I'm good at and I know what I'm not good at. And I generally don't have partners that are good at the same stuff I'm good at. What would be the point? If we're both
Sure.
focused on the same thing, I don't necessarily need to have a partner. So, strategically, when we're putting together a business plan or a business model, and when anyone is debating, do I bring in a partner? You have to choose carefully. It's like a marriage. I mean, you're going to spend probably more time with your business partner than you are with your significant other. You're going to have disagreements, but you've got to focus on communication. You can't be selfish. And, one of the things that is extremely important to me is full transparency.
Hey, it's Bill Barrett, and I'm thrilled to be back with another exciting episode today. We've got a real game changer joining us, the one and only serial entrepreneur, Todd Sawyer. Buckle up as we dive into Todd's incredible journey from holding dreams of a corporate life in New York City to finding himself in the family business. Discover how he took the reins of a successful company founded by his father and not only expanded it exponentially, but he also orchestrated a major exit strategy with a sale to a publicly traded company. Todd's story doesn't stop there. He's acquired and expanded and rocked multiple businesses in entirely different industries. Whether you're just starting your entrepreneurial journey or you're a seasoned business owner hungry for growth, Todd's journey is packed with inspiration and practical wisdom. Get ready to unveil the fingerprints on success with the remarkable Todd Sawyer. Hey, everybody. I want to welcome you to today's episode of Fingerprints on Success. I'm joined today by Todd Sawyer. Todd's a longtime friend of mine. In fact, full disclosure, going back to fourth grade. But Todd has, over the years, been a serial entrepreneur, a friend, a client, has built several businesses, has a wonderful story to tell, which I can't wait for you to all be able to hear today. I brought Todd on the program for a number of reasons, but I thought what's really interesting is a lot of times people talk about the next generation in entrepreneurial businesses and families. And they often talk about them in a negative way, about what they did to destroy someone's legacy. Well, Todd's story is much different. It's taking a wonderful legacy and turning it into something that, and I knew his dad very well, that he probably himself couldn't have imagined it would become. And then he wasn't done there. He did a lot of things that I think are important that our audience and our entrepreneurial world out there want to hear. He figured out how to scale that business. He figured out how to get to a tremendous liquidity event. He figured out how to take other businesses in the same and different verticals and grow them exponentially and scale those businesses. A lot of times we see people that go out and they have one successful business, but repeating it, stepping and repeating it and doing it not only in the same vertical, but different verticals, I think is unique and special. So without further ado, I want to welcome Todd onto the show. Todd, welcome. Thanks for coming on.
I am so happy to be here, taking part in your podcast. It's really an honor to join you today.
Well, thanks. And so why don't we start with, and no one could tell it better, start with your story. Take us through the entrepreneurial story. How did you get into the building business that you're in, and in fact, other verticals, as I described before, but tell us about your journey and where it starts so people get a sense of where you've come from and where you are now.
Sure. Let me preface it by saying there's people out there, and I'm sure you hear it as well, that will say, oh, it must be nice. Must be nice to have the car. Must be nice to have that watch or whatever it is. And to those people, I like to tell my story, and I like to tell them, if you do what I did for 30 years, you can have this stuff too. But unfortunately, we live in the instant economy and everybody wants everything easy and fast. And it just doesn't work that way. You've got to be willing to do the uncomfortable work. You got to be willing to do the things that other people aren't willing to do. So my story starts, I graduated from college with a degree in finance. And interviewed with a bunch of people in New York City, in finance, and ultimately decided I'm going to go and work for the family business, at least until I figure out what I want to do. I didn't even own a suit. I was going to have to commute to the city. I said, let me go and see what it's all about. I had worked and done manual labor jobs for my father all through high school and college. So when I got out of school, I said, Dad, I'm going to come and work for the business. And he said, great, go get your tools. I'm like, what are you talking about, Dad? I just got my degree in finance. He's like, that's awesome. Go get your tools. So I was a very highly educated insulation installer for at least a year. I was out every day with the crews installing fiberglass insulation, at the warehouse at 5:30 in the morning, loading trucks, going to the job, installing insulation, coming home, unloading everything. It was definitely a difficult time. I saw a bunch of my friends, getting these what appeared to be fancy jobs. I don't know how fancy they were. And here I was, blue collar, after I just got my degree. After about a year in the field, the education process continued and taught me estimating. He taught me how to hone my sales skills. From there, I learned about operations. From there, I started to understand the accounting side of that business. But I literally did everything from installing insulation to doing scheduling, to doing sales, to doing blueprints, and started from the absolute ground up. I think I was making $300 a week when I first started, and I had some friends that were doing pretty well. And, it was tough not to be discouraged. But in hindsight, it was the smartest thing that my father could have done. So I graduated college in 1994. Does that sound right? I think that's when I graduated.
Yep. Now, when you joined, by the way, the business was strictly, just for our listeners, it was primarily at that moment installation of fiberglass insulation products in new construction or renovations, things like that, an installation business.
Yep. Very small business. I think we had like 6 trucks, maybe 10 employees, 12 employees. I was, number 13, lucky number 13. And, just grinded it out for a bunch of years. And, there were many a night where I was there alone at 10 o'clock at night, trying to figure out how to make the schedule for the next day, how to make sure everybody was working, how to make sure everybody was happy. And, it's ingrained, it's burned into me, sitting in the little pretty gross bathroom in our little office, in our little warehouse, and just leaning my back against the wall and sliding down the wall with tears in my eyes and looking in the mirror and saying, I don't know that I can go on another day. You pick yourself up, you say, I got to do it. Like, I got to do it. I'm not going to quit. And with tears in my eyes, I go back to my desk with the big pad. There was, I don't even think I had a computer at that point, big eraser, and you figure it out and you do it all over the next day. So, it didn't take all that long. I would say 5 years. By 1999, my father got an offer to sell the business. There was a big consolidation in the industry at that point. And he had an offer, and I was still a little wobbly, right? He wasn't sure that I was going to stay or go, so I went with him to the meeting. I was very impressed with the suitor that wanted to buy our business at the time, his business. And on the way out, he said, what are you going to do? I said, I want to do this. He said, great. I'll make you the same offer that he just made me. I'll sell it to you. I said, okay, I'll do that. I said, well, how's that going to work? He said, well, I'll give you 30-year terms. I said, okay, great.
That was a good deal, though.
It was a good deal, although it was interest only for the first 10 years, which was pretty good for him, not so good for me. But he very quickly then, at that point, I think it was about a year later, he retired for all practical purposes. And the reasoning was sound. He told me and he told everybody there can't be 2 captains to the ship. he's ready. He may make some mistakes, but I'll be here. I'll be here to answer questions. He was still funding the business. So, I had to report to him with every big decision and review quarterlies and monthly financials with him. But he stepped down, which was amazing because we had a lot of people in the industry and friends. And a lot of times, a father or a mother or a grandfather, they have a lot of trouble stepping down and turning over the reins. And it creates issues within the business, within the relationships. And so he stepped down and, I said, Dad, the industry is changing. We either have to grow or we're just going to get trampled. So he said, listen, I'm behind you. I'll back you. And off to the races we went. Very quickly, we opened a second location in New Brunswick. And very shortly after that, we started adding additional products to our offerings. We added spray foam insulation, blown insulation. We got into the seamless gutter business. We got into the garage door business, the commercial fire stopping business, and grew the business substantially pretty quickly, which had its own challenges. Ultimately bought another location down in Tuckerton, New Jersey that was on the verge of bankruptcy. Went in there, turned that place around. So we had 3 locations in New Jersey. And then several years later, we had another location in Southeast Texas, another failing business that our supplier, one of the big installation suppliers, came in and said, we need your help, Todd. This guy is awesome, but he's a terrible businessman. So we went down to meet this guy who's a wonderful guy, still friends with him today, great guy. And we went in and turned that business around and ultimately sold the entire group to a public company called IBP.
Yeah. Talk about those turnarounds though, too, because I think that's interesting for people listening. You multiple scenarios where you go in and take over or buy a business that is, obviously has customers, has business, but's on the brink of failing. Because I think 2 interesting things that you did that you mentioned in this part of your story is you turning around businesses that you took over and turning them into successful businesses, and also scaling. Because in this time period, you went from 10 employees, as you said, in the early days, you were employee number 13, give or take. When you ultimately sold to IBP, how many employees were you then?
I think it was about 160 employees.
Okay.
With, maybe 100 trucks on the road going out each day, all across New Jersey and Texas. So it had become a substantial company. We were one of the largest. We were the largest independently owned company in New Jersey, and one of the 3 big ones in New Jersey, whether they were public or owned by a group or, whatever the situation was.
So what would you say is some secret sauce on turning a business around?
I love that term.
What you're really saying is you facilitated your growth through expansion and acquisition, but acquiring companies that were failing. So I think it would be great to hear a little bit about kind of how does one turn around failing businesses, not just once, but in your case, several times, because I know later you're going to get to another part of your entrepreneurial journey where you turned another business that was in trouble around. But give us a little sense of how do you do it? What's the magic?
So listen, there's 2 sides to every business, as you know. There's the, operations, and then there's the finance and accounting. My secret sauce, what I do best, is the finance side. I understand pricing. I understand purchasing. What I tell people, my running joke is I can read a financial statement like Goodnight Moon. It's just easy for me. I'm not good at a lot of things, but I'm good at that. And then I surround myself with great operators, with people that have a building science background, people that have an operations and logistics background. And then we put those 2 sides of the business together. And I've been also very, very lucky with partnerships. Partnerships are notoriously difficult. You hear horror stories about friends that are partners that didn't work out, family members that are partners and it doesn't work out. I've been extremely blessed to have incredible partners, and I have partners in every business, and they've all been spectacular. And when you can find a partnership that works and creates a synergy, it 1 + 1 = 3. You can just get so much more done. The individual parts add up to something much greater. So, but my secret sauce, what I do is I stay in my lane. I focus on what I'm great at. And I either have partners or I hire people or I groom people to do the things that I'm not great at or that I don't want to do.
Okay. Well, it's a great, so really too, one of the things you're saying is, if I'm reading it right too, is you're not just bringing on partners because, you haven't needed their investment money or anything like that. What you've done is you've brought on strategic partners that can help you scale.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Listen, I know what I'm good at and I know what I'm not good at. And I generally don't have partners that are good at the same stuff I'm good at. What would be the point? If we're both
Sure.
focused on the same thing, I don't necessarily need to have a partner. So, strategically, when we're putting together a business plan or a business model, and when anyone is debating, do I bring in a partner? You have to choose carefully. It's like a marriage. I mean, you're going to spend probably more time with your business partner than you are with your significant other. You're going to have disagreements, but you've got to focus on communication. You can't be selfish. And, one of the things that is extremely important to me is full transparency. If I buy a lunch, then, when I put it on the company credit card to take out a client, I track it. There's nothing that anyone could ever, not that anyone's checking, but nobody could ever misconstrue that he's taking liberties, because we don't. None of the partners do. You know, just makes life so much easier when there's transparency and everybody's honest and nobody's playing games. I think it's a rare thing. I really do. I think that in general, partnerships don't work out real well. But again, I've
Well, yeah,
been very,
and
very
they keep a
blessed.
lot of lawyers
That's true.
employed, thank God.
So they
Just
work
kidding.
out for you, not so much for the partners themselves.
No. So, okay. So let's go back to the story, right? So you have this big liquidity event with IBP and this insulation and multi-vertical business now that you've built that had garage doors and gutters and different types of insulation and spray foam and the whole gamut. And now you sell that business. What happens next? Because for a lot of people, the sale of the business is, they sail off into the sunset. They're hitting golf balls somewhere in Florida or wherever.
Sure.
Or there's others who then try to get involved with other businesses and don't do as well as they did with the primary business. So tell us, after that, what happens next?
Sure. So a few things kind of happened simultaneously prior to our sale. And you had touched on this before. We had the opportunity to buy another business, a local business, a lumber yard. Same type of situation. I had known the gentleman, really good guy. He got himself in trouble financially. He called me and asked me to borrow money. I said, I'm not a bank. I don't loan money to people. He said, well, would you consider buying the business? Well, we went down, we looked at his numbers and looked at his operation and said, I think that we could probably turn this business around because we have the client base. We understand the construction business. It was different, but we said, if we can make the right deal, we're going to do it. This is with my business partner, Michael. So we went in and that was 2014, 2013 or 2014. They didn't even have a computer system either. I mean, it was press hard 3 copies. The customer gets the pink copy, the yellow copy goes
Right.
somewhere. And so it was a lot of work, was painful for the employees because nobody likes change. They were not tech people, but, we worked hard to bring in clients, tripled, quadrupled the volume over the course of a year and a half, 2 years, got the proper technology in place. And it was still, considered a very, very small lumberyard. At the same time, Well, actually, it was shortly after we purchased the lumberyard, we had our liquidity event. So we still had the lumberyard. I wasn't all that involved in it. My partner was really working on that. After the liquidity event, timing worked out. We bought some properties down in at the beach in Maniloking, and we started to build some spec homes. We had the lumberyard, so we're now our own supplier, which worked out really well. So my partner pivoted and worked on the building side, and I jumped into the lumberyard and started, working more on that. But frankly, I was bored. I think for 2 weeks, I said, I'm going to relax a little bit. I got to take a breath. And I had all these grand plans. I'm going to learn how to play the guitar. I'm going to learn a couple more languages. I'm going to go and enjoy myself. After about 2 weeks, I wanted to jump out a window. I'm like, I gotta do more. I gotta go out. I gotta produce something. I gotta do something. I gotta feel good about getting up every morning and getting something done. So while I was, working on growing the lumberyard business through a series of events, I and another friend of mine started looking at the car dealership business. So this friend of mine, Sean Lyons, he had been in the industry, but on the manufacturing side for many years. On that side of the business, you get transferred, moved around quite a bit across the country. And he was at a point in his life where he didn't want to do that anymore. So an opportunity arose, through people that we were associated with to buy a car dealership. I mean, what the hell did I know about that business? But, a
Right.
little cocky. I'm like, business is business. I
Yeah.
can
But
figure
not
it
in your
out.
vertical, not in what you had been
No.
doing in the past.
So we went through the process of getting vetted by the manufacturer, by General Motors, ended up putting a deal together. And thank God, the people that we bought the business from, they actually stayed in for 25%. It's the Salerno family. They own a bunch of other dealerships. And I will tell you, it was painful. That first year, I didn't know what I didn't know, so I went in completely blind. My partner had an idea, but he came from corporate. So being an entrepreneur and dealing with the employees, I mean, it was a culture shock for him, but within a year, I learned the business. I learned the financial side of the business. He learned the operation side of the business. That business was not doing well either. We were able to turn it around. Listen, it was touch and go for a little bit, but we were able to turn the business around, pay off all the debt, make it profitable, and run as something completely different, completely different industry, completely different way of doing business. To me, the biggest difference was the dealing with General Motors versus dealing with the president of Owens Corning. I kind of thought it would be similar, very, very different. But you learn, you figure it out. And that business is now doing fantastic. We're doing absolutely great. We're looking to acquire a second dealership. But again, to me, it's about the numbers. Either the numbers work or they don't. So a lot of people are buying up dealerships and the deals are not good deals. We're waiting for the right deal to come along and then we'll jump on it.
I've always seen that. It's an interesting comment you just made. Representing entrepreneurs as an attorney for so many years, I always find it interesting that I find my successful entrepreneur clients are patient in their opportunities. You kiss a lot of frogs before you find the prince or the princess. And I think that happens in all businesses, whether it's a law firm and you're recruiting talent into your firm, or you're analyzing a business that you want to buy. What you're really saying is, you take your time, you wait for what you think is the right opportunity, and you don't just jump at something. And you see that a lot of times in industries when there's consolidation going on, where money's just starting to gets thrown at something, and people start getting away from the fundamentals of a good purchase, right?
Absolutely.
And I see it with the real estate developers, same thing.
Yeah.
Like they're not going to overpay the successful ones aren't just going to overpay for land and then
Absolutely.
try to figure it out later. They're going to wait for the right opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, you can't let ego get in the way. To me, it's paint by numbers. There are some synergies that you can find to say, I'm willing to pay up a little bit. But at the end of the day, we're looking for distressed companies that we can fix, that they'll become more valuable. If you get a company that's running perfectly, you're paying a multiple of EBITDA, usually, is how most acquisitions work. If you can't make it more efficient and more profitable, it's going to take you a lot longer to recover your initial investment. And if things take a turn for the worse, you're in trouble. You may be too leveraged. Your debt service may be too high. So you got to be very, very careful. When things are great, they're not as great as they seem, and it doesn't last. And when things are horrible, it's not as horrible as it seems, and that doesn't last either. So, you've got to really understand where the economy is, where that industry is, and make intelligent decisions. And listen, I've missed some really good opportunities because I didn't jump on something and then the value went way up. But you can't play Monday morning quarterback either. You don't know.
And that's okay, right?
That's okay. That's okay. Listen, I'd rather miss an opportunity than invest a massive amount of money and lose it. It was too hard to make the first time around. So I'm going to be very, very careful how I invest the money that took so long to make and was so hard to make the first time.
Yeah. So since the car dealership, you're not done yet. We talked about the development of custom homes along the ocean and talked about the car dealership. And tell us about what you've been doing since then.
So this past December, I had a non-compete from the sale of my insulation business. It ran out. It was 7 years because there was a mechanism in place to kind of keep pushing it back, which worked for me. It was fine. But at the end of the non-compete, which was December 31st, I knew I had an opportunity. Yeah, it's been 7 years since I've been in the industry, but I'm still connected. I still know people. My phone would still ring throughout the years. What are you doing? When are you coming back in business? Very shortly after that non-compete ran out, we got back in the insulation business. My original partner and I, along, his son just graduated from college. So we said, if you're interested, you come in with us. So now he's doing what I did. He's out getting dirty.
He's got his toolbox, right?
He's out there today. He's out there today getting dirty. I had him out on Saturday getting dirty. And, he understands better than I did because he knows what I went through. He's heard all the stories 1,000 times. So we got back in the insulation business, and, the suppliers, I had all the guys to call, and they've been fantastic about, getting us the right numbers and the material and everything else. I, again, took on some incredible partners. I had a buddy from that industry from Atlanta, really, really large company down there. I said, Luis, why don't you, take a small piece? He said, no, I'll just help you. He's that guy. I'll just help you, whatever you need. You need help with estimators. I said, I'd prefer if you took a little piece of it, and your contribution can be helping with estimating. He's got a substantial company with a team of estimators. He just gave us an estimator. That was his investment. So that's fantastic. Another buddy of mine who is one of the largest framing contractors in New Jersey has got incredible relationships and, the ability to sell the product and leverage his relationships to sell large multifamily contracts. So I said, Charlie, why don't you come in for a little piece? He said, yeah, I'll just bring you around. I'll bring your guys around and introduce you to people. I said, I feel more comfortable if you came in for a little piece. Again, I want people to have some skin in the game.
Sure.
So very quickly, that insulation business kind of morphed, and we're in the midst of figuring out a merger. But even though we're separate entities, we can now offer framing. So, and this is for multifamily apartment buildings. That's our focus. So we'll frame your multifamily apartment building. We'll insulate it. We'll do the commercial fire stopping collars and fire caulk. We opened a drywall division. We'll drywall. We'll do your interior doors and trim, which, I can supply and install. And it's turned into, this incredible venture, and we're still feeling our way through it, but it's been really well received by customers. It's a turnkey operation, or pick a product. Our funny sales pitches, you can't leave without getting something. It's like a buffet. We'd love for you to try everything, but you can't leave without putting something on your plate. And it's worked really well. So, we've got now a big team of people that share responsibilities. We just moved into a big office space altogether, and we've got, pretty lofty goals for where we want to take this business. I believe that we can make this a multi-state business. I believe that we can become one of the largest subcontractors in the Northeast and potentially in the Mid-Atlantic. Again, it's about surrounding yourself with the right people and being willing to do the work. And I thrive off of it.
Well, so with that as a backdrop, which is really a fabulous story of growth, scaling, continuing and building up on a legacy, and showing that your abilities can apply to different types of businesses. They have to be in even in similar verticals. Obviously, when you look at the car dealership business, for example, and the fact that you're looking for another dealership, talk to me a little bit about, for the business owners and entrepreneurs out there that are listening, what are some of your guiding principles that, you talked about work ethic, obviously. When you reflect on your journey and the success, what do you think some of the guiding principles are that you've lived by, that when you look back on it, you say, that's something that really contributed to me being successful?
Sure. Listen, there's a lot of things. One is the amount of effort that you put into something is what you're going to get out of it. I didn't have hobbies, my entire life. I took up golf last year. It was the first time I had a hobby in my entire life. And listen, I made a bunch of mistakes along the way too. It probably would have been good for me to have a hobby and to have some downtime, but I put the effort in. And sometimes, doing your best some days is, at one level, and your best is at a different level the next day. But if you can say, listen, I did my best today, I did the best that I could, and that's all I can do. That's, a big part of it. Obviously, there are some guiding principles, and, it may be a good time to kind of delve into the theme of this podcast is, what are my guiding principles and where did they come from? My father was absolute business gentleman. And like you said, you knew him very well.
Yep.
Your word has got to be your bond. In this day and age, it's just not for a lot of people. I mean, you know that better than anybody. At your law firm, someone says something and they do something else, and you have to have a contract. And listen, I believe in contracts. I believe in details. But if I give my word on something, that's it. I don't renegotiate after the fact. Even if I made a mistake, listen, I may have the conversation, but I'm never going to try to renegotiate with a vendor. I'll never put somebody in a position where I'm hurting them. I'll take the hit and learn from it and move on. And there are a lot of people out there that, again, they back themselves into a corner and they want to make it everybody's problem. If I create my problem, it's my problem.
Well, I always say when I'm doing contracts for clients, they're important. They give you rights. But at the end of the day, and I tell clients this all the time, they're only really worth as much as the people who sign them. Because it's who you choose to get into business with that is really going to make the fundamental difference. And sure, you got to have your agreements, and you never know what might pop up where you're going to have to rely on them. But it's going to happen very rarely when you choose correctly in the first place in terms of who you're actually doing
Absolutely.
business
Listen,
with.
you get a contract, you get it written correctly, and then you put it in a drawer and you hope you never have to look at it again.
That's right.
But it's there because, listen, things happen. We
Yeah.
get it.
So things do happen.
Yeah, they
So
happen.
let me spin it on you a little bit, which
Okay.
is when you look back, I mean, because you mentioned it before briefly about, it's not all about success. You don't just walk around every day, wave a magic wand, everything just turns perfectly your way. When you, especially for entrepreneurs that are listening that are at different stages in their journey, what are some of the pitfalls that you would, kind of like Todd today versus Todd, 20, 30 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, when you look at like blind spots that maybe you didn't see certain things coming, or pitfalls that now today you think you might avoid, or you would tell someone to avoid, what are some of those things?
So listen, there's been a bunch of tough lessons that I learned over the years and a lot of personal development that I've worked on. A big one is to understand that a leader is not a title. If someone says, "Oh, you're a manager," that doesn't make you a leader. A leader is somebody that people follow. So you don't need to have the title to be a leader. And sometimes it's difficult for new managers or new business owners to understand. They finally get the hold of the reins and they want to, crack the whip from behind, so to speak. There's that picture of this type of leader is hitting you with the whip and the other leader is the first guy pulling. You got to be the first guy pulling. You can't get too big for your britches. My daughter and I, one of our favorite songs is always stay humble and kind. Be good to people. Be kind. Keep humble. If you get too cocky or too big in your own head, your head gets too big, it's the beginning of the end, in my opinion. And, you've got to keep your ego in check, and sometimes when something feels wrong, you gotta, you have to trust your gut. And there's been, like I said, there's been a bunch of mistakes, some of them very costly. You also gotta know that you can't just give up. You keep going, you learn from it, and you keep moving forward.
So let me move to a little bit of a different subject, because I think it's interesting to talk about whether it's forecasting or, hot topics or issues. What would you say right now when you think about business, the economy, things that are going to impact people? What's like a current events topic that is on your mind right now, and how are you navigating it or recommending that people navigate it? Can you share a little bit about something that in terms of the world at large?
Yeah, in all of the industries that I'm involved in, the market, the interest rates play a part. In the car business, interest rates play a part. The higher the interest rate, the less car you can afford. And people might say, I'm going to wait. It's too much money now. In the home building industry, rates go up, you can afford less house. So it becomes more and more difficult to move product, to sell product, or you've got to lower your price points in order for people to be able to afford your products. It's a scary time right now with the economy in the situation that we're in, with all of the things going on in the Middle East right now. We don't know. I don't think anybody can know what's going to happen. So you've got to understand that if things change and if we fall on times that, become more and more difficult, you have to be able to tighten your belt. When things are good, people have a tendency to get fat and happy. They spend a lot of money. They, fancy office space and fancy this and fancy that. And yes, you want to reinvest in your business, but you have to be able to pull back at any point when things get tough. And that might mean downsizing, your staff, which that's usually the last piece that we would ever look at. because people, that's your biggest asset, but not spending on things that are not absolutely 100% necessary. Is it going to make or break us by not ordering the best level of paper that's out? No.
Right.
Why have we been doing it anyway? Like, why on earth have we been getting the highest level paper? Nobody cares. Like, most of it goes in the garbage anyway. So, you got to be able to pull back, knowing that there is going to come a time when you got to pull back. Leverage is good. Too much leverage is no good. You have to be able to, manage your debt service. There are some, guys that are super old school that have no debt. They go out and buy a truck for the business and they pay cash. I'm not a believer in that either. I believe that, right now interest rates are high, but when interest rates were low, use other people's money at a super low interest rate, and you can take your money and do something that's going to have a bigger return on it. So you just have to be very, very careful. You got to keep your eye on the ball at all times. And like you said, try to forecast what's going to happen. You got to see the train coming down the track so you can get the heck out of the way.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people have concerns about 2024 and kind of what this whole year look like. And it's an election year and there's a lot of different things at play. It's a kind of a weird economy. The interest rate factor, it's like on the one hand, there's a lot of jobs, but on the other hand, interest rates are impacting business all over. They're impacting transactions. To your point, one of the things I often say, even in my own firm, just talking to partners, is about what are the resources that you need versus what are the resources that you want.
Absolutely.
Right? So
big difference.
And we're in the people business too. So, a partner may want an associate. Is that a resource that they need? Maybe they do.
Yeah.
Or is it a resource that they want because it's going to make their life a little bit better, a little bit easier? And when you come across difficult, challenging times, to your point, you got to be prepared to make the sacrifices and keep the business sound, because it's, a lot of people rely on it as their way of life. And so it's not just about the entrepreneurs at the top. It's about everybody.
Well, people have a tendency to get a little bit spoiled when things are good.
Yep.
Owners and their team. And, it's really important to build the company corporate culture of, listen, when we're doing great, we're doing great. When we're not doing good, we're not doing good. It can't be when things are great, we all share it. And when things go down the toilet, that's all on me. As the
collective we means we.
You rise and fall like the ocean. And again, when things are great, I'm happy to give bonuses. I'm happy to do profit sharing plans. But when things get a little tricky, everybody needs to understand that, one, those things go away, because how do you do profit sharing if there's no profit? And two, everybody's got to chip in. You can't have the assistant. You can't have two people doing a job that one person could really do, but it's going to be a little bit more difficult. If the money's not there, the money's not there. Like I said, one of the first things I said, neither lasts forever, but people can't jump ship as soon as things get tough. And that, again, that's a company culture thing.
I like that line, by the way, Todd, too, about neither lasts forever, because there's really a lot of positivity in that, right? I mean, we talk about good times, but, things are never as good as you think, but things are never as bad as you think. So if 2024 does present challenges for people, and I'm sure it will for some, it's never as bad as you think.
Yeah. Listen, a lot of people, go ahead. I'm sorry. I was going to say, a lot of people, something happens and it's doom and gloom and this is horrible. And listen, I get it. Times get tough, but you can either ride that train all the way to the end, or you can say, you know what, I'm going to make my own luck. I'm going to figure out a way to work around what's happening right now. And those people that can do that find themselves with massive opportunity when things start to turn.
So briefly, I'd like you to talk about, you gave us some great insight into your dad and your relationship with your dad and how special that was and what a great mentor he was to you. What do you do in terms of trying to pay it forward and kind of take that spirit of what helped you on the beginning of your journey and push that forward for other people?
So listen, I love to mentor young people, no matter what business it is. I've spent a lot of time working on myself. Like I said before, personal development, reading lots of books. You and I have shared some really good books together, and it's a life's work. You're never done working on yourself. So I love it when, a young guy comes in the business or a young woman comes in the business, and it's rare, too rare, but when you see that they've got that thing, that sparkle, that I forget, it was a seminar I watched, someone can be Elvis or Pigpen. Pigpen walks in with a big cloud of dust over him, and you're like, oh God, this guy again. Elvis comes in and you're like, Elvis is in the building, baby. This is my guy. So I've been very, very fortunate. I've had two such young people that I just knew they had something. They had the thing. And both of them, listen, they did the work. They did the work. They earned it. And everything that they have and everything they accomplished is 100% them. But, I spent time coaching them, teaching them. And it's the second time around I told the story of the first time it happened. And both guys now, our running joke is, God, are you the way you are because I made you this way, or are you born that way? And they're like, no, well, a little bit of both, Todd. They're wired that way. But, listen, they learned, they listened, they did the work, and they're both brilliant business people, young guys. And I'm so proud of them. And honestly, that's as much of a reward to me to see these guys, and their success as whatever other benefits that come from being a successful businessman.
Yeah. Well, the podcast is called Fingerprints on Success. And, you just basically described it, how, to be able to have your fingerprints on the success of someone else is special. And that's what mentorship is all about. And it's about taking all those lessons and pushing it forward. And isn't it something how attitude is so huge, right? Because if you're coming from the right place and you're a successful person, and you've been successful in many, many different ways, you latch on to that great attitude, don't you? Like, where it's that you could just see that the person is like a pile of clay that is like ready to be molded, and they're dying to learn and to grow and to work and be successful. And they kind of facilitate you being able to get your fingerprints all over their future.
Absolutely. They have to want it. They have to want the success. They have to want to be mentored. Listen, there's been a lot of other people that I've tried and it didn't take. So, when you've got the right person, it becomes much easier. And again, it's everything from, helping them understand that it's not going to happen overnight, to, listen, I understand. I get it. You're stressed. To, I tell all the young guys with young kids now, you will go to the Halloween parade and watch your kids in the Halloween parade. But I said, I don't want to hear it. You're going. You'll come back when you're done. Your daughter's got a softball game. You're going to the game. If that means you got to work a little bit into the evening, well, then you got to do that. But you're going to the game. Do not miss family time. What are we doing it for if we're not doing it for our families? Yeah, of course, it feels great to, create businesses and be successful. But if you neglect the people that you love, I think you're missing the point.
Yeah. And what you really described also too is the ability to be coached. Or in sports, they'd say, like college recruiters love a kid that they call coachable, because if someone is open to being coached and open to growing and personal development, there's really no limit to what they can achieve. But it starts with a mindset of being open to that.
Absolutely.
So we're getting towards the end of our time. I've got a couple other things for you to ask you, but one is, and especially when people have reached the kind of level of success that you have, you're obviously not waking up every morning thinking about, how much money am I going to make today? Sure, everyone loves making money. Don't get me wrong, and you want to make money, not lose money, but it's not what makes you, get out of bed and jump out the door in the morning is, oh, I might make some more money today. What is the why, right? They talk about this, there's been much written on a person's why. When you think about your why do you do what you do at this stage after having been successful so many times?
I love to build businesses. I love it. I do jump out of bed in the morning and I'm excited to go to work, and I'm excited to help other people grow. And I'm very, very vested in other people's success. And I take that responsibility very, very seriously. So whenever I, have a venture, start a new venture, do a joint venture, and we hire people and start to groom people, I take that as a responsibility. I can't take it lightly because their lives now depend on this business to put food on the table, to provide them with opportunity, to grow financially, to grow personally. But just the act of creating something and something to be proud of is extremely important to me. And it's, the thrill of it. Like you said, listen, I love stuff. I do. I'm not going to lie to you. You don't need it.
It's okay.
But I like it, and there's always that next level. And again, there are still people that leave their fingerprints on me. I've had some other friendships and other business partners, very, very wealthy guys. This, guy that I'm real close with, he'll call me and say, hey, I'm coming up to pick you up. We got to take this quick meeting. He's flying his private jet into Morristown, be there at 10 o'clock. You show up there and you're like, oh, I got a lot more work to do. I don't want to fly. I don't want to go to Newark Airport. I want to do this.
I think you're not alone, by the way, in not wanting to go to Newark Airport, but that's for another conversation.
There's always another level, when you reach, the end of the field, you got to keep pushing the goal line back. Otherwise, like there can never be an end point. What happens when you reach the end? You die. Yeah. So, you got to keep pushing that, pushing the goal line further and further. So you have something to work towards. So you have goals that you want to achieve. And to me, that's never going to end. I even when I retire, I'm not going to retire. Like, you got to be doing something, to sit around. I love golf now, but I can't play golf every day. I got to have.
Well, then it won't be fun anymore.
No, I got to have something to keep pushing.
Okay. So last question, what has you most excited right now? When you think about, what you have going on in your life and your business right now, what has you the most excited today?
Well, I definitely, maybe because it's new and it's exciting, but the new venture that I'm involved with, again, we rebranded, we're calling it Built. And it is the group of companies that we're putting together to do medium density multifamily apartments. And I just see so much opportunity with it. I'm surrounded by incredible partners, incredible employees, and it's something that I think that we can quickly take to, a whole different level really, really quickly. And, my partner, who is the owner of the framing company, just looking at the projects that he's doing right now and that he's done, it's mind blowing. I mean, these are 6-story buildings that are 3 city blocks long. And it takes my breath away. I'm like, how the heck do you know how to do this? He's been doing it his whole life. To him, that's what he does. Does he love looking at financial statements and analyzing everything to death? No, he hates that. But that's what I do. So that's why that partnership works so well. And we're just extremely honest and transparent, and makes the partnership very, very easy. So it's an exciting time to grow that business and hopefully move into other states and continue to add product offerings. It's something I'm real passionate about right now.
Well, we wish you great success with it. I hope that it matches or exceeds all the other great things that you've built over the years. And Todd, just want to say thank you again for being a good friend, a good client, and also, a great guest on our program, Fingerprints on Success. So thank you so much for joining us today.
I'll say one last thing. I was trying to work it into the conversation and never made it. One of the people that definitely left their fingerprints on me is you. We've had this amazing relationship since we were little kids. We've been through a lot of different life events together. You've always been there for me, not only as an attorney, but as my advisor. And I've learned a lot from you over the years, both on the personal side and on the professional side. And I'd like to thank you for that.
Well, listen, I appreciate you as well. And I'm very grateful. Those are very kind words. I really appreciate it. And again, to your continued success on your journey. And I'm thrilled to be along for the ride with you. So thanks again for coming on, Todd, and we'll see you soon.